Have you ever wondered about the strangest photos that time has forgotten? Today we will reveal to you the strangest and most fascinating vintage photos that you will love. I promise you, they are truly rare and interesting. Enjoy the show. Here's a shot of the 1967 Star Trek episode Mirror, Mirror. This episode put the crew in an alternate reality with a dark side. Here's a behind-the-scenes shot from I Dream of Jeannie starring Barbara Eden and Lawrence Storch. This 60s sitcom was a blast, following Jeannie the Ginny and her astronaut master. Barbara Eden became a pop culture legend in her role. Classic TV magic right here. This intense shot is typical of the edgier, more provocative photography of the late 60s and 70s. Artists such as Guy Borden and Helmut Newton pushed the boundaries with surreal, disturbing images. Photos like these weren't just about fashion. They challenged notions of freedom, art, and social norms. A powerful snapshot of an era that dared to question everything. Lana Wood, 1969, chilling by the pool with a live cheetah. That's classic Hollywood. While her sister Natalie went for the classic look, Lana went wild. This shot is all 60s nostalgia, glamour, grit, and a little crazy thrown in. Young Michael Jackson circa the 70s, perhaps during his Jackson 5 days. Vintage Hollywood street scene, probably from the 1930s to 40s, includes a Western Union, the fast food chain of the day. The classic cars and storefronts give off the vibe of early Hollywood as it was still establishing itself as the movie capital of this world. Top photo. Dorothy is the Wicked Witch, a classic showdown. These characters were first created in 1939 by Judy Garland and Margaret Hayton in one of cinema's great rivalries. Bottom photo. Years later, a rare, touching scene between the actresses shows that underneath every evil character is a friend. Here's Amelia, aviator and true trailblazer for female aviation. This photo of her shows her bravery and public adoration, probably from the late 20s or early 30s. Earhart was more than a pilot. She was the very first female to cross the Atlantic by herself and inspired numerous others to fly. Her legacy of courage is still flying high today. Here's a young Norma Jean, long before she became Marilyn Monroe, holding a lamb on a farm. Moments like these remind us of the squatter roots of a girl who one day would change the world. Here's Carrie Fisher in her iconic Princess Leia costume, and Mark Hamill wearing a floral robe during Return of the Jedi, 1982. This fun shot is of the laid-back feel of the set and proves that even in the darkest Star Wars universe, there was room to laugh. Rare glimpse into Victorian fashion prep. Women getting ready with huge crinolines, the cages that gave gowns their volume. The image shows the effort and discomfort of 19th century beauty standard, when style was as much about personal statement as it was about status. David Bowie in London with Angela Barnett in 1969. This photo shows Bowie's loose, rebellious late 60s style already on display. They walk with an empty stroller and reflect the bohemian attitude and individual style that would characterize Bowie on his way to becoming a music/fashion icon. An early 20th century dive diver reading a newspaper underwater. Diving gear was heavy and restrictive at the time, so scenes like this were both amazing and funny. This image shows the adventurous spirit of those who venture underwater. Classic 1940s-50s Los Angeles Ralph's Supermarket in Art Deco style. These stores were more than shops. They were local landmarks and social centers. The vintage cars are nostalgic and capture an earlier era of American urban life. Construction worker stands on a steel girder above New York City in 1930s, with the Chrysler Building as a foreground. Photos like this show the tenacity and grit of men working at dangerous heights without safety gear that built the city's skyline. Young Barack Obama with his father, Barack Obama Sr., at San Francisco Airport, 1971. The rare photo is one of the few times the two spent together. Obama Sr. lived abroad for most of his son's life in Kenya. The visit marked a turning point in young Barack's self-discovery process. Henry Ford and George Washington Carver were American pioneers of industry and agriculture. This photograph is of their friendship and respect. Ford liked Carver's work in sustainable agriculture, and the two looked at the use of natural resources for industry, early environmentally friendly innovations. Two 1920s women step out of a car at a polling place. This photo shows the spirit of change after women gained the vote in many countries. It represents a new freedom and independence with its loud fashions and confident attitudes. Mongolian noblewoman, possibly a princess, photographed early 20th century. Her elaborate clothes and headdress are status symbols and reflect Mongolian cultural heritage. The Western-style clock on the table and teacup on the top represent early Western influences in Asia during this period of global contact. Two tennis legends, Bjorn Borg and John McEnroe, posed for a rare off-court moment in the 1980s. Their rivalry was legendary, Borg was cool under pressure while McEnroe was fiery. This shot shows them relaxed but competitive. Their matches left a lasting impression. President John F. Kennedy visits a U.S. Navy vessel early in the 60s. Telephone in hand, shades and a slack-jawed jacket. Kennedy's easygoing demeanor typifies his style during the tense months of the Cold War. His military connection made him a popular and relatable leader. Electric car from the 1910s and 1920s with charging station. This photo is from a time when electric cars were considered quiet and emission-free for city driving. These early electric cars were limited by charging infrastructure, but opened the door to what today is clean energy. A young Susan Sarandon in the 1980s, confident and stylish. Sarandon is known for big roles and magnetic personas, but her look here captures her effortless charm that made her an instant movie star. Her casual outfit is a nod to her rebellious side, as is her fearless approach to fashion and acting. Push-ups by a British royal guard while two tourists watch in amazement. Royal guards are usually stoic in their composure, which makes this comedic moment all the more unexpected. It is a rare glimpse of the lighter side of an otherwise serious environment. Cold soup is served in a 1950s Campbell's vending machine to office workers. This retro innovation offered a hot meal at a push of a button, in the spirit of mid-century modern convenience. Humphrey Bogart and Audrey Hepburn on the set of Sabrina in 1954. This snapshot compares the seasoned Bogart to the young, mysterious Hepburn. Their on-screen as well as off-screen chemistry gave Sabrina an iconic pairing of two icons. Jackie Kennedy Onassis at the helm of a ship, showing her adventurous side after the White House. She was known for her elegance and independence. This image shows her spirit at her first date with Greek shipping magnates Aristotle Onus, a reminder of her strength and passion for life. A classic 1950s or 60s shot of a woman changing a narrow heel shoe on an escalation next to a caution sign. The image conveys the elegance and sometimes the discomfort of fashion in an era when style required a little risk. A charming glimpse into the everyday lives of women who combined grace with practicality. An early 20th century gasoline station at the dawn of the car age. Back then, getting gas meant going to a pumping station that sold oil, parts, and repairs. Penn Oil Co. sign, one of the pioneers of the fuel industry. Einstein playing the violin, a tribute to his love of music. Known for his pioneering work in physics, for relaxation and inspiration, Einstein often turned to Mozart and Bach. This passion was a reflection of his search for order and harmony in science. Auto industry logistics during the 1970s. Cars are loaded onto rail cars for shipment across the country. This snapshot is from an era when auto production was soaring and rail transport was critical to getting new cars to dealerships nationwide. Freddie Mercury has a playtime with ice cream on the bullet train in Japan, possibly in the 70s or 80s. Known for his energetic stage presence, this shot shows his comedic side and love of travel. Surrounded by locals, it's a charming glimpse of Freddie embracing new cultures. Lauren Bacall looks confident and elegant in this 1940s photo. With her cat-like stare and sultry vocals, Bacall here is a strong, independent woman in an era where Hollywood stereotypically casts women in soft roles. A young Princess Elizabeth, then Queen Elizabeth II in contemplation. It is a late 1940s portrait that reflects her poise and elegance as she prepares to serve on the throne. Her serious expression hints at the strength of her reign. Marilyn Monroe in a wardrobe test for How to Marry a Millionaire, 1953. This is her iconic look, elegant and timeless, and part of Hollywood's golden age. The film showcased Monroe's charm and is a classic of film history. 1970s London street style shot of two women in different styles. One with polka dots and big white accessories, the other with stripes and statement earrings. Their confident poses are a throwback to a time when fashion meant being yourself and breaking with tradition. Vintage 1950s ad for some of the ritzy 1950s kitchen appliances. This kitchen with its built-in refrigerator is a perfect representation of the idealized American lifestyle. Home appliances were comfortable and opulent. It's a nostalgia trip back to a time when convenience came before style. Vintage ice cream truck of the early 20th century for Kerry Ice Cream Co., promoting daily ice cream treat. Eat ice cream every day, but make it Kerry's ice cream, says Kerry. Such vehicles made ice cream more readily available and brought frozen treats to people when such conveniences were uncommon. A zookeeper gives a rhino a scrub in what looks like a bathtub in this vintage photo. Such images captured moments when exotic animals were given surprising care and captured by the public at the time. This scene probably aimed at promoting the close relationship between zookeepers and their animal friends, and at drawing in curious visitors. This beautiful ancient stone head is probably from the Olmec of modern-day Mexico. One of the epoch-making Olmec, probably one of the earliest advanced Mesoamerican civilizations. These huge heads carved out of volcanic stone. sometimes weighing several tons each, are thought to represent rulers or important figures between 1200 to 400 BC. Details such as the helmets and facial features give insight into the religious views and social organization of the Olmec society. Image 1 of 1. A woman rides a Moto Guzzi V7, a 1960s Italian motorcycle with a V-twin engine. Her look is one of freedom and independence, a leather jacket, tall boots, and confident pose. Moto Guzzi was one of Italy's oldest motorcycle manufacturers. Its models were very much loved by vintage motorcycle enthusiasts. This photo was taken during extreme winter conditions where snowfall nearly buried a power pole. It must have been one of, judging by the amount of snow up to the insulations, the heaviest ever snowfall in the area. This scene likely occurred in the northern or midwestern United States or Canada, in which harsh winters and strong blizzards can bring about these massive drifts. The man in the photo, possibly a utility worker, makes the snowfall even bigger. This is where pizza first got its start in America. In his tiny shop on Mulberry Street in 1905, Geno Lombardi created the nation's first licensed pizzeria. This was more than pizza. It was Italian tradition in NYC's heart. The war was over by May 1945. Men of the U.S. 101st Airborne Division relaxed in Hitler's Eagle's Nest above the Bavarian Alps. They were part of the Band of Brotherly Brothers, which liberated Europe. This brief pause shows them enjoying the view, a few drinks and company after battle. A slice of everyday life mid-20th century Italy. Here a milkman on scooter delivers fresh milk from the can to women in the village. Until supermarkets came along, street vendors like this Latteo sold fresh milk. They rode Vespa or similar scooters down narrow streets, showing some community spirit at each stop. A classic 1961 photo of Cuban leader Fidel Castro hugging Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin. This was more than a meeting. It had been a symbol of the Cuban-Soviet bond in the Cold War. Castro saw Gagarin as the triumph of socialist ideal, and this visit showed the world the impact of his spaceflight. This photo is full of admiration and alliance. Young Franklin D. Roosevelt on a yacht early 1900s, long before he got into politics or battled polio. Growing up in an affluent family, he enjoyed sailing. This is a glimpse of a carefree time in his life prior to leading the U.S. through the Great Depression and into World War II. In 1969, Woodstock Festival drew more than 400,000 people to a farm in Bethlehem, New York, for 3 peaceful days of love and music. This huge crowd embodied the 60s spirit of resistance to war and freedom. Mud and logistically chaotic as it was, Woodstock would become a hippie icon with performances by Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and a lot more. Step back into the 1920s at one Duesenberg showroom, where luxury cars were works of art. These showrooms made buying swanky, with chandeliers and ornate balconies, was a high society event. Duesenberg cars were of the highest engineering and aesthetic quality and were the benchmark for luxury automobiles. A 1950s snowy December scene reflects small-town America's holiday spirit. Streets are covered in giant candy canes and winter coats line the windows of festive storefronts. Classic cars and crowds bring us back to simpler times when holiday shopping was just a community event. These young women are members of the Teddy Girls, an anti-war subculture of 1950s Britain. They were in defiance of society in masculine clothes and casual poses. They stand against bombed-out building blocks and represent a new generation looking for freedom and identity in a changing world. Haunting image of Max Schreck as the Count Orlok from the 1922 silent horror film Nosferatu. Schreck was one of cinema's first and most terrifying vampires, with his long fingers, bald head, and sinister posture. Nosferatu set the precedent for vampire films and is a chilling piece of horror history. This image shows the Soviet flag flying next to the McDonald's flag in a historic moment in history. McDonald's opening its first Moscow restaurant in January 1990 was a sign of the Soviet Union opening up to Western culture. Thousands lined up to taste the West as the USSR entered its final days. In this 1970s image, a data operator works on an early mini-computer, probably for business data processing. These were bulky machines that required manual data entry via punched cards or tape. These complicated machines required female operators at the dawn of the digital era. This control room at a nuclear power plant from the 1970s or 80s shows the intense atmosphere of early nuclear operation. Operators in white coats had hundreds of buttons and displays to check every detail while adhering to safety protocols. This image is from the atomic age and shows how man hoped to harness nuclear power. A milkman delivers bottles of fresh milk to a customer on a snowy morning in this mid-20th century Britain photo. Milk delivery was part of daily life. Interactions like this one show the warmth of community connections even on cold winter mornings. A lamplighter in Paris lights a gas street lamp using a long pole pictured in this photo in Paris. Before electricity came around, lamplighters lit the city at dusky and then turned off the lamps at dawn. This long-gone profession represents a time when cities had to hire people to light their streets. This photograph is of a formal appearance by British royal family, probably in the 1960s or 1970s. Queen Elizabeth II wears a regal gown and gloves. Prince Philip stands beside her, and also next to her are Princess Anne and Prince Charles. Such events reflected the monarchy's devotion to tradition and reinforced the public image of the family as a symbol of British stability. This 1950s New York street scene is full of life. Crowds lined the sidewalks with classic cars and ads for Coca-Cola. A group of people carrying clothes in the foreground adds to the urban scene. It's a snapshot of daily life, business, culture, and the pace of the Big Apple. Even the simplest outfits have a magnetic quality about Linda Carter. A true style icon is the 1970s Wonder Woman in jeans and Shakey's Pizza Parlor t-shirt. Her confidence and effortless look turned her into more than a movie superhero. She was a fashion icon for a generation. Here we see Simonetta Stefanelli and Al Pacino as Michael Corleone and his first wife, Apollonia, from the iconic Godfather, 1972. This moment captures Michael's brief search for peace in Sicily, away from the violent world of the mafia. Apollonia is the innocence, Michael the dark. The scene is a metaphor for love and the shadows that follow him. Rare portrait of a Japanese samurai in full traditional armor, possibly from the late Edo/early Meiji period. A fiercely decorated kabuto helmet and quiver of arrow at his back, this samurai is a model of Bushido, the samurai's code of honor. His posture and gaze suggest determination and give a glimpse of a culture about to undergo transition to modernity in Japan. This photograph is of typical Italian life. That man with the towering tambourines on top of his head may be a street vendor or a craftsman. In southern Italy, tambourines are required for traditional music and dance like the tarantella, for example. The woman beside him may be testing one of the tambourine or just chatting. The image recalls a time when street vending as well as instrument making were part of everyday life. Vintage photograph of a passenger aboard an early Lufthansa, probably in the 1920s or 1930s. Lufthansa was founded in 1926 and provided an elegant and adventurous air travel experience when flying was a novelty. A company employee assists the passenger in his light suit and hat. This image is from a time when aviation seemed exclusive and each flight was a special occasion. Muhammad Ali celebrates winning rematch against Sonny Liston in Lewiston, May 25, 1965. This was the moment that made Ali a legend, a phantom punch that snagged Liston in the first round. The top-down perspective brings out the energy and intensity as everyone is focused on Ali, a memorable fight in boxing history. This mosaic is part of an ancient Roman heritage found in archaeological excavations. This kind of works of art were laid on the floors of rich residences and public buildings as proof of the Roman craftsmanship and cultural values. It is probably a mosaic of mythological or historical scenes painted with colored stones and glass tessera. An archaeologist or a conservator cleans the mosaic to bring it back to its original beauty. Such discoveries open up a window to the past and allow the modern observer to appreciate ancient Roman art in its earliest forms. This is a funny and informal photo of the 40th President of the United States, Ronald Reagan, wearing an unusual outfit, a formal shirt with a tie, sweatpants, and dress shoes. The image is likely taken aboard Air Force One and shows a more relaxed version of the president preparing or working in a more casual environment. Such photos confirm Reagan's charismatic and down-to-eastern persona, and show he was not afraid to be funny and approachable in office. This particular picture is out of the 1940s during World War II, when conservation had been prevalent. Foreground, women on roller skates wave a sign reading "Skate to work, save gas." This slogan is relevant today because Americans were encouraged to help the war effort by doing small acts of conservation. The women posing smiling in front of New York skyscrapers show the zany times of patriotism at the time, which was lighthearted but serious. It's a look at American culture during the war, when even everyday things became patriotic. A photo of a young Princess Elizabeth, future Queen Elizabeth with her dog. The 1930s image shows her joy and affection for the dog, a nod to her childhood love of animals. especially gorgeous, who would become royal companions. This candid moment reveals a personal side of the future queen, connecting her to the public as a girl with a deep bond to her furry friend. This is Julie Newmar, the 1960s actress and dancer who grew to become Catwoman on the Batman television series. Newmar was a popular star of the era because of her beauty and elegance. This 1960s portrait shows her charisma and sophisticated style, the confidence and appeal that made her an icon. Her expressive look and poised posture reflect the mysterious charm that fans loved. A huge black sea bass taken by fisherman Edward Llewellyn in this historic photo. This was a world record catch at 425 pounds. The fisherman poses next to his almost giant catch. This image was taken on Catalina Island in California, where the marine life is plentiful and when anglers faced great challenges with simple gear. A high-rise worker repairs or replaces a huge clock face in a building in this photo. The shot is most likely of a famous clock tower, perhaps the Allen Bradley in Milwaukee or the Boston Custom House Tower, and shows the worker at eye level with a view of the city below. The image shows a time when such a work required skill and courage, and safety measures were far less developed than they are today. The sprawling cityscape adds to the scale and bravery of the work. Publicity shot in the mid-1950s shows how cars were both essential to daily life and status symbols. The woman in the classic suit with hat and gloves sits behind the wheel. The clean lines of the dash, the chrome accents, and the wide seat are examples of era automotive design which was all about comfort and style. Such photographs were sometimes used in advertisements for the modern, independent woman, a new concept at the time. This image is all about femininity and sophistication with modern technology and comfort for the driver. This photo is of an experimental train, the Rail Zeppelin, built in Germany in the early 30s. This unique train was designed by engineer Franz Kruckenberg and had a large propeller in the back to make it more like an airplane running on rails than a locomotive. The streamlined design was meant to reduce drag and allow high speeds. Vintage photo of a cooperative ouvrier des coiffeurs in Limoges, France. Such worker cooperatives became popular in Europe in the very first 20th century and promoted collective work and equality. The barbers outside wearing traditional white coats represent their cooperative's dignity and community spirit. Rare and new photograph of young Norma Jeanette Baker before she became infamous as Marilyn Monroe. This photo is probably from the 1940s and shows her starting out modeling. Her natural smile, her soft curls, and her casual attire point to her youth and innocence, traits that would become her iconic persona around the globe. This shot from Scarface, 1984, features Al Pacino as Tony Maine, one of cinema's most notorious and controversial characters. The opulent mansion setting with its red staircase, gold statue, and posh furnishings marks Tony's meteoric climb from poverty to extreme wealth and his ambition and appetite for excess. Holding a cigar, Montana appears confident and defiant, traits that helped and cost him his success as well as his downfall. Photograph of the Endurance, British explorer Ernest Shackleton's ship trapped in Antarctic ice in 1914 to 1917. Shackleton was traveling to the South Pole when his ship got stuck in the Weddell ice early 1915. The ice crushed the ship over several months until it sank, leaving the crew alone in the elements. Here, George Lazenby is seen in a rare family scene. He was once James Bond in the 1969 film On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Lazenby here with his first wife Christina Gannett and their children in an off-screen moment, rather than his suave 007 persona. See this industrial masterpiece. Blacksmiths hold an enormous anchor chain link, probably from the early 1900s, intended for the shipbuilding industry, or for heavy-duty marine use. Chains like these were needed to secure huge ships, and could withstand the harshest sea conditions. Imagine how strong and precise it would be to forge such large links. No modern machinery needed, just skill and hard work. This stone figure is tucked behind the architecture on the facade of St. John the Baptist Church in Angoulême, France. It dates from the 12th century and is just one of many curious details of Romanesque architecture, where humor and mystery often entered sacred buildings. Sometimes sculptors of the time inserted strange figures and creatures almost out of place, either as human curiosity or as satire on otherwise solemn church facades. A picture from World War I, interior of Notre Dame Cathedral sandbagged in Amiens, France. Against overwhelming artillery fire, the cathedral's prized artifacts and impressive architecture were shielded this way, turning a church into a war zone. It shows how war can reach the most sacred places, and how to save history and culture when all else is destroyed. Here is a classic portrait of the actress Sally Field, whose charm and talent has won American audiences for decades. Sally has acted in Smokey and the Bandit, Norm Ray, and Forrest Gump, and has won several Oscars and Emmy Awards. This photo of Sally at the beginning of her career shows her youthful beauty and captivating gaze, a precursor to the range and emotional depth to which she would become an Hollywood icon. Rare photo of Angelina Jolie's mother, Marceline Bertrand in the 80s. You can totally tell Angie got those looks. Marceline herself was an actress and hugely influenced by Jolie on the humanitarian front. Beauty runs in the family. A very rare and touching photo of Charlie Chaplin later in life, taken on a peaceful day in Switzerland. That's his wife Ona pushing him in his wheelchair along a lake shore near their Lake Geneva home. Chaplin came to this country from the United States during the McCarthy era and lived here far from Hollywood but near family. A vintage photo of an Edison Electric Company crew working on an early urban electrification project. These linemen are probably installing or repairing electrical lines or scaling poles with the equipment of the day. No hard hats, no harnesses, just grit. This shot features the lovely Dawn Wells, best known as Mary Ann from Gilligan's Island, alongside a young Kurt Russell when he was just starting his career as a Disney kid. The photo is from one of Disney's earliest 1960s adventure films, and it conjures up memories of an earlier Disney that produced wholesome family fare. Russell rose to stardom through Disney productions for young audiences, and his charm is infectious at that age.